Good evening. Welcome to the October 6, 2023 City of Minot Planning Commission meeting. Roll call, please.
Bauman,
Here.
Domes,
Here.
Bacon, Gates, Hogalter, Iverson, here, Kibler,
Here.
Leiter, Longton, Menham,
Here.
Nesdahl, Offerdahl,
Here.
and Pontanila. Here. And we have a quorum.
Perfect. With that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4. Approval of the September 6, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So to approve?
All right, we got the motion by Commissioner Bauman and a second by
Second, yeah.
Commissioner Kibler. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Okay. That will close this discussion and call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Domes,
Yes.
Iverson, yes, Kibler,
Here, yes.
Menham,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
and Pontanila.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5. The zoning map amendment, St. Anthony Hill Edition. Public hearing request by Jason Sorensen on behalf of the City of Minot for a zoning map amendment of R1 single family to residential to P public district for the purpose of bringing the existing use as a cemetery into alignment with the land development ordinance of the City of Minot. Further, the zoning map amendment is being pursued to facilitate consolidating several properties that compromise the cemetery into one lot in the future. Legal description is property is lots 1 through 6, Block 1, St. Anthony Hill Edition. With that, we'll turn it over to staff for a report and findings of fact.
Thank you, Chairman Offerdahl, members of the commission. So here's the subject property with the 300-foot notification boundary surrounding it. Skip that one. As you can see, this is a standalone, single-family residential zoned piece of property within the cemetery. Everything else around it is P public zone. At the end of the day, the goal here is just to zone it for its existing use, which is for a cemetery. So it is occupied. There is no development proposal other than the goal of the Public Works Department is to create some efficiencies and reduce the number of parcels they're having to evaluate when they're looking at the cemetery as a whole. In order to consolidate those lots, they need to have all the pieces of property zoned in the same district. So it's a pretty straightforward rezone request. It's just really, overall, it's just a cleanup. The proposal does align with the future land use, parks and recreation. Yes, cemetery would be considered a park. Here's some images. The findings of fact meets all of the evaluative criteria, and staff is recommending approval with no conditions. And I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fitzgerald, just out of curiosity, this cemetery is pieced together from a variety of parcels. I mean, how does that happen?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Kibler, so not all the land was platted. Some of it is, some of it's not. I imagine decades and decades and decades ago, it was acquired, it was expanded, it was more land was acquired, so on and so forth until it is what it is today. But at no point did they consolidate the properties into one lot. And so what you have is just a mishmash of different parcels, all comprising what would be the cemetery property. This one happens to be R1 single-family residentially zoned for whatever reason. So they're just trying to rectify that and turn it into P public zone.
And so when it's one whole property, will it still be unaddressed? I mean, I'm just wondering about the nature of cemeteries, whether no one lives there, nobody gets an address, what?
No, it certainly will have an address,
Okay,
because any number of incidents can happen on a piece of land, regardless if there's a structure or not. And so you need to have an identifying marker for emergency services.
okay, thank you.
Any further questions for city staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anybody in attendance that wishes to speak on behalf of this agenda item? Anybody that wishes to speak in opposition of this agenda item? Anybody wish to speak for or against this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and I'll turn it over to the commissioners for a motion.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations and findings of fact.
Seconded.
All right, I got a motion to approve by Commissioner Bauman and a second by Commissioner Domes. Okay, any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, we'll call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Domes,
Yes.
Iverson. Yes. Kibler,
Yes,
Menham,
yes,
Offerdahl,
Yes.
and Pontanila.
yes,
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6. Variance Cells First Edition. Public hearing request by Barbara Moe, owner for a variance to the rear setback from 20 feet to 5 feet 6 inches and a front setback from 25 feet to 18 feet 6 inches to accommodate an attached garage. The legal description for the property is Lot 13, Block 1, Cells First Edition. That will turn it over to staff for findings and report.
Thank you, Chairman Offerdahl, members of the commission. So here's the subject property. It's located in the South Minot residential neighborhood off of 15th Avenue Southwest and 7th Street Southwest. The letter of intent is provided here. I believe it's Exhibit 2 of the written staff report. Ultimately, they're requesting a reduction, as Chairman Offerdahl mentioned, from 25 feet to 18 feet 6 inches on the south boundary, which would be considered the front, and then from 20 feet to 5 foot 6 inches on the north boundary, in alignment with the existing residential dwelling on site. So the proposal is to construct a new attached garage. Presently, there's a carport where it is. So the setbacks as they apply, again, the front of the property would be the south, and the rear of the property would be the north. It's a 50-foot lot in depth, and between the 25-foot front setback and the 20-foot rear setback, it leaves only a 5-foot band of buildable area. And so it just does not work with our zoning code with regard to being it's just too shallow. Had the residential structure been oriented to the west off of 7th Street Southwest, then that would be the front. And say they took alleyway access into their garage, they would only get they would have a 6.5-foot setback on the north. There'd still be a 25-foot on the south, but it wouldn't be as prohibitive as far as construction goes. In this case, the setbacks inhibit any development whatsoever, any reasonable development. And so we advise the applicant to apply for a variance given this relatively unique situation. There are corner lots in older parts of Minot that have developed in this manner, and the way that the setbacks are applied, this is the result. And so ultimately they're coming back requesting a variance to a situation that's relatively atypical, to accommodate a garage and reflect similar development characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. So the zoning of the subject properties are R1, same with the surrounding neighborhood. And the future land use is suburban residential, and that applies to the surrounding neighborhood as well. Here's some site photos. You can see in the picture to the right, it's facing northeast of the subject property. You can see the existing carport and the home. So staff has found that it meets all the evaluative criteria to be approved for a variance based on the shallowness of the lot. And therefore, staff's recommending that it be approved, and there are no conditions tied to this approval. So stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for city staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Fitzgerald. So shallowness has to do with a lateral dimension? Is that correct?
Shallow would be, the opposite of the depth of the property. So how
The
deep
opposite
it-
of depth?
Yeah, so it's a shallow property, and therefore it doesn't have the adequate depth to accommodate the applicable setbacks to the property.
And this is a mistake of like the builder not centering the house on the platted lot originally, or?
The way that the existing codes read does not take into consideration older practice where a builder could pick and choose what's the front of their property versus on a corner lot, you get to choose what the front was. And in this case, the codes have been rewritten. Now it no longer makes sense for this property, and this is why they're coming in for the variance.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for city staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on behalf of this agenda item? Come on up, sir. If you can put your name and number on that sheet of paper up there. Let us.
Hi, my name is Sean Moe. I'm requesting this with my wife. It's, as Mr. Van Dyck has indicated, the shallowness, the current rules only allow me to build something that's 5 feet wide because it's a corner location. But I'm here to answer any questions. If anybody has any questions, I'm just trying to build a garage attached to our house. That's all we're trying to do.
Any questions for Mr. Moe? Okay, thank you. We may call you back up if we have anything else. Is anybody else that wishes to speak on behalf of this agenda item? Anybody here that wishes to speak in opposition of this agenda item? Anybody wish to speak against or for this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn it over to commissioners for a motion.
Move that we accept the recommendation of the staff.
Motion for approval based on staff's finding and fact by Commissioner Domes,
And I'll second.
second by Commissioner Kibler. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Domes,
Yes.
Iverson. Yes. Kibler,
Yes.
Benham,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
and Pontanila.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 7, zoning map amendment and conditional use permit, Valley Street. Public hearing request by Devin Hunter representing Valley Street Evolved LLC, owner for a zoning map amendment from C2 General Commercial District to M1 Light Industrial District for bringing the property into conformity with the land development ordinance of the city of Minot. The application also includes a conditional use permit for open warehousing as part of the pursuit to bring the property into conformity. That will turn it over to city staff for findings and report.
Thank you, Chairman Offerdahl, members of the commission. So here's the subject property along with the 600-foot notification boundary. This one is outside of city limits. Located along Valley Street. I want to say about 500 feet northwest of the grain hopper as a point of interest. Here's a letter of intent submitted by the property owner. It kind of outlines everything that they're requesting with regard to the zone change and the conditional use permit. Again, the conditional use permit surrounds enclosed and open warehousing. The applicant provided a site plan. Many of the existing structures are there. What is prompting this application is remedying an existing situation, if you will, where there's been a few buildings that have been erected without the benefit of a building permit, as well as bringing some of the open warehousing uses in alignment with the activity going on. So the open warehousing use that is existing today would not normally be permitted outright within a C2 general commercial zone. And therefore, we prompted the applicant to apply for a zoning map amendment to a zone that's more appropriate and in line with our future land use map, as well as this activity on site does have an open warehousing. And open warehousing is just where inventory is stored out in the open, as opposed to within a structure. So here's the zoning maps you can see for reference. All the purple would be your M1 light industrial. There are some M2 heavy industrial in the area. A lot of the R1 single family residential is a lot of large lot. There's some significant topography that affects this area. I believe most of us are familiar with driving down Valley Street and understand the topography and the character of Valley Street along this segment, and it is very industrial. And that is one of the reasons that the future land use map denotes this area as a light industrial corridor, and that is what the zone that the applicant is seeking to change to. Here's an image, a couple images. So facing southeast and then facing southwest towards the subject property. You can see a couple of the structures that are existing today. So staff finds that the evaluative criteria required to approve a CUP and a zoning map amendment are met. And we are recommending approval of both the zone change and the conditional use permit. The conditional use permit does have some conditions that I'll go over here in just a minute. So the first one, it's pretty wordy, so I'll just summarize it. This was included to memorialize the landscaping requirement of a buffer yard. So if you'll recall, there's a lot of R1 single family residential properties surrounding what will be a light industrial property if this is approved. So we wanted to put the property owner on notice so they weren't surprised by some of these requirements when they come in for future building permits. The landscaping buffer yard is required along the periphery of any shared property boundary with that single family residential district. Now they do get credit for existing landscaping, and I have talked to the applicant. There is quite a bit of existing on-site landscaping that would probably exempt any effort on their part to meet the requirement because there are quite a few trees up in the area and again, the topography. I did include at the tail end of this that should a variance be sought and approved, either in whole or in part, that condition would be waived. Obviously, we don't want to create a condition that holds them to this if they're able to secure a variance through topographical reasons for those buffer yards. And if you recall, the Dollar General was able to secure a variance to the buffer yard requirement because of the topography in the area. There's such a significant drop-off that landscaping the rear of it was problematic and really difficult to maintain, and it didn't really make any sense. And so in those instances, that's where the variance was appropriate. Now, neither I or the applicant, to my knowledge, has counted trees or see exactly what's out there. So I just wanted to include this just in case they need to come back and request a variance or, don't know what exactly they're going to have to do. Probably, based on what I've been able to see, it's probably a few trees and it should be fine. But if they do encounter something that is difficult, they can come right back here and ask for relief. And if approved, then go about their way. So that's pretty much what the big block says. Again, this is memorializes the requirements, so we want to make sure that open warehousing is screened. Again, added this variance language in here, given the topography. It doesn't make sense to fully screen an open warehousing area where the topography immediately goes right up above a 6-foot screening. So outside of security reasons, there may not be a reason to screen. And so therefore, again, if the applicant finds that some of these requirements are onerous and there's a genuine hardship based on some of this like topography, then they can come back and request relief. But nonetheless, I'm just putting it in here to memorialize these requirements that apply to all uses of this nature within an M1 light industrial district. Property owner shall install the street trees, so that would be required regardless. There is adequate room to install the street trees. These are 1 per 50 feet along Valley. This would be done no later than August 1st, 2024. And then all structures which have been erected without the benefit of a building permit. There's 2 options, either removal or 2, just follow all necessary post-construction inspection processes. There's a different process to follow pre-construction versus post-construction. Obviously, pre-construction inspectors are able to inspect it along the way as it's being constructed. It's different when it's already all enclosed, everything's all done. So the way I word it is defer to the building official. The building official will guide them through this process. And ultimately, we want to see these buildings certified no later than August 1st, 2024. And then I also built in a 1-year extension just in case it's not reasonable and that 1 year is just not enough. So this condition's been reviewed by the building official and it's adequate. So I think this will button this up. At the end of the day, there's a bit of non-compliance on this property, but I want to remind everyone that the goal is compliance and not punishment. So we're just trying to get the property into compliance. It's a perfectly fine use for the character of the area, and that is why staff has recommended that they just change their zone and seek this conditional use permit, remedy with the building official for the unpermitted structures, and it'd be good to go and moving forward. That's the goal. So that wraps it up, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for city staff? Mr. Baum.
Mr. Van Dyke, just a couple of questions for you. First of all, looking back at the current zoning map, it looks like this as a C2 property is currently spot zoned. Basically, we've got a standalone C2 property not surrounded by any other C2 properties. Is that kind of the correct interpretation or understanding? Or is that sliver also going to remain C2?
Chairman Offerdahl and Vice Chairman Bauman. So yes, so the remaining piece of property would be C2, right, of the C2 properties. This is the bulk. The applicant does not own the other property. Otherwise, we probably would advise them to just pull this one into it. As far as, I would guess that the C2 came after the light industrial activity, given the character of the area, but yeah, not sure.
That's great.
So
Thanks
this
for
is
that.
moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Second question then, do we have a change in use on the property, or is it mainly maintaining the current structure, current everything that's there now? We're just kind of changing the label.
That is correct. So the existing use has been identified. It's been going on for probably a year or two. I don't know, I defer to the applicant with regard to, I know they had a home occupation to some degree on site. The business has grown. Structures have been erected in line with that use over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But yeah, I defer to the applicant if they're here. But yeah, so there's been, this use is nothing new. I don't expect, I think actually there is an accessory structure that is desired to be erected for enclosed warehousing, but it would fit within the scope of what's being requested. Nothing new that you wouldn't see today if you drove by, besides the structure itself. No use.
That's good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Van Dyke, when I look at this 600-foot perimeter for contacting people, It doesn't look like there's any structures there. How many people did you have to contact here? And if it's a warehouse, do you have to contact like the owner, or does just the letter go to the warehouse?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Kibler. So while it may not show up in the image, some of those lots are quite a bit bigger, and yes, they're residential structures further to the west outside of the aerial.
Okay.
So obviously, if they're not included in that pink line, if their property is in there and their home's on the property, regardless if it's outside the notification boundary, they're still receiving a notification. So it just has to touch the boundary of the property, and then the recipient of the mail will receive the notice.
It has to be contiguous with the outside 600-foot boundary or with the property that's getting rezoned?
Yes, so the subject property, and then we apply a 600-foot buffer around there. If any part of an adjoining property happens to be on or within that 600-foot boundary, they get added to the list to receive a letter.
And how many people did get letters in this, just out of curiosity? It looks
look-
pretty vacant.
It's probably about 20.
Oh, okay.
And then honestly, if there's duplicates, because a lot of people own adjoining property, then we whittle that down. So we don't send multiple letters just because you own multiple properties.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for city staff? Oh, we'll be right with you, sir. Any further questions? All right, with that, we're going to open the public hearing, and then we can, is there anybody in attendance that wishes to speak on behalf of this agenda item? Come on up. My apologies, I had to close the commissioner comments.
Yeah. So my name's Mike Baker. Should I sign on there?
Yes, sir.
And I own the property that would be straight to the south of that. And I guess my biggest concerns right now is, I believe it is a concrete company that owns Evolve, or that Evolve is. So with that being said, what scares me is if we go from commercial to industrial, is there going to be a lot of silica dust that is going to be created from this, and health concerns that, because I live straight south. You guys know how North Dakota is. That wind will turn, and I don't care how many hills are in the way. We get hit with that wind pretty hard coming through there. So that's one of my biggest concerns is there going to be silica dust in the air all the time? Is there going to be health concerns I have to worry about in the future? And going, like, right now, what I heard several people say at the city building was, well, that's not the intention. And I know that might not be the intention today or tomorrow, but intentions change, right? You have this property as zone industrial now. What's the future going to bring? Right now, if you look up here, it's residential around me. They just, last year or 2 years ago, it changed. They put a commercial building next to my property, which there's some changes that happened to that. I won't bring that up too much. There's the residential area to the east of me. They're pulling gravel out of it, that location as well. So it seems like the industrial part of Minot, or what's happening now, is sucking in on me. And I got a 3-year-old, a 2-week-old. So this is concerning to me. And that's the concerning part about this. What's it going to bring in the future? Am I going to have to worry about my health? The noise that we're going to have to hear all the time if they're doing it that way. So that's just one of the concerns I have about this property.
I guess comment with that too, that he brings up, there is no batch plant on here, right? So that would require a conditional use permit if they wanted to do that, similar to what we've done in the past. So, I mean, am I correct on that?
Correct, Chairman Offerdahl. So the application that's being considered, and if approved, would only permit enclosed warehousing related to a commercial activity and open warehousing in that area that was specified on the site plan. So there should be no batch plan activity at all. And if you do see some on that location, let us know, and then we'll go out and do what we do.
Yeah, because if it's the way that it is now, I mean, it's not affecting me at all. Like, but intentions now, as long as they got to go through you guys where they do put a batch plant or something like that, that's my biggest concern, because, yeah, I feel like everything's sucking in on us over there, so.
Very understanding, and I think that's why city staff went very detailed into their conditions with their conditional use permit on saying what they can and cannot do, and that would be for future use as well, so.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Anybody else in the public that wishes to speak on for or against this agenda item? Public hearing is still open. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Turn it over to commissioners for a motion.
I will move to make a recommendation based on finding in fact and the conditions placed by the planning commission, or the planning and zoning. Can you go back to it?
Motion to approve by Commissioner Iverson. To include the conditions and the
Yes.
recommendations of the staff.
I'd second.
Second by Commissioner Kibler. So can we have any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to have an explanation from staff. On that photograph, there appears to be a red barn on there. Was this previously agriculture? And do these areas ever get grandfathered in? And would one of the conditions require the destruction of that building?
Chairman Offerdahl, Commissioner Domes. As far as the use of that barn structure, as far as I'm aware, it's always been used for warehousing activities. It might have been related to the existing on-site residential structure that was there. I don't know that any farming activity had been conducted in the area. That doesn't mean it didn't. The topography would lend it more towards ranching than it would farming per se. So can't say the entire history of the structure. I know the recent history of it has been for enclosed warehousing. It's just inventory storage. As far as the agricultural grandfathering activity, that would only occur, they'd only be grandfathered if the use had not ceased for more than a year. Again, these are all hypotheticals we're talking about. So if they've ceased some agricultural activity, which I can tell you the applicant has not conducted agricultural activity based on my discussion with them. If they'd ceased it for more than a year, then no, they would not be able to go back and perform that agricultural activity on that property. And there's nothing requiring them to demo the structure. That particular barn is not one of the two that is unpermitted. There's a couple others that have been erected in the last 3 to 5 years without the benefit of permit. That barn has clearly been there for quite a while, and it'll stay so long as the applicant wants it to stay.
Thank you. And then I got just one follow-up question on that for discussion here is, and these conditions have been presented to the applicant, and there has been no hesitation or good discussions, bad discussions. They feel like they're
Correct. Chairman Offerdahl, members of the commission. So how we function with the conditions is obviously not all the applicants are going to be pleased with some of the conditions. We also don't want to, if there's a way that we can rewrite a condition and make it more amenable and still satisfy the goals of staff to mitigate some negative externality that's spilling over to adjoining property, then we'll rewrite it if it's amenable to the applicant. In this case, I added the variance language because they were concerned about landscaping. They were concerned about screening based on the topographical considerations that I mentioned. And that's why we share these staff reports with the applicant to say, hey, is there anything alarming that pops up at you? Because this is our recommendation. In this case, we were able to modify that condition. We didn't lose the goal of the condition, but we were able to modify it to give them a little bit of breathing room so that they knew that they had a path forward if there were some hardships that they experience in the future. And so that's how every single application goes. We share it with them so there's no surprises. We want to avoid having surprises here at the Planning Commission meeting, and certainly want to work with them to address an issue such as these. So yes, in this case, they have looked it over, rewrote that section, resent it back, and they're like, okay, that's much better. So while they're not here, I can say, at least over the phone, I received I can confirm that the applicant was amenable, at least to the rewritten condition, which was presented tonight.
perfect. And thank you. I do appreciate you giving them a roadmap to that to help them in the future with that. So And I also appreciate the fact that we got an August 1st, 2024 deadline that, kind of puts a hard number at it, because I've known kind of getting bitten in the butt in the past on something like that. So thank you very much on that. So any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we can call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Domes,
Yes.
Iverson,
Yes.
Kibler,
Yes.
Benham,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
and Pontanila.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Moving on to agenda item number 8, other business.
Yes, Chairman Offerdahl, members of the commission, it is that time of year where selection of the chair and vice chair occurs. So leave it up to the planning commission to have that discussion.
Typically, I believe we start with vice chair. Is that correct? It doesn't matter, does it?
I don't think it matters.
Okay. So open to any motions?
Well, if it doesn't matter, I'll go ahead and move to have Dustin Offerdahl remain as chair for the planning commission.
Second.
I will move to have Tim Bauman remain as vice chair.
Yeah, I'd second.
Let's have a vote on the original motion, and then we'll move on to the
We'll
second.
go a vote on the chair position. So we called a roll for that.
Bauman,
Yes.
Domes,
Yes.
Iverson,
Yes.
Kibler,
Yes.
Benham,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
I'll abstain.
and Pontanila.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and then follow up, we got a motion on the table for vice chair, Commissioner Bauman, the second, so we can call the roll on that.
Bauman,
Abstain?
Domes,
Yes.
Iverson,
Yes.
Kibler,
Yes.
Benham,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes,
and Pontanila.
Yes.
Motion carries.
perfect. Any other business?
Guess we should ask you if you want the jobs first.
Great. I guess I could have went with any discussion.
Chance to get out.
So, okay, well, thank you. Any other business? No?
Nope,
We're
that's
good?
it.
Any other business from anybody? All right, I guess with that, we'll move on to agenda number 9, adjournment. Meeting adjourned.
Short, sweet.
I just.